The rain hammered against the windows of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado as Lieutenant Jessica Hayes walked through the main entrance. She was 32 years old, stood 5'7" in her boots, and carried herself with a quiet confidence that seemed at odds with her unremarkable appearance. Her uniform bore no warfare pins, no ribbons beyond the standard administrative awards. To anyone watching, she looked like another Pentagon paper pusher visiting for a routine inspection. The Navy SEALs in the lobby barely glanced at her as she checked in at security. They were used to administrative officers coming through, people who'd never seen combat, never felt sand between their teeth in some hostile desert, never knew what it meant to operate in the shadows. "Ma'am, Admiral Morrison is waiting for you in conference room 3, the petty officer at the desk informed her, handing back her ID. As Jessica walked down the hallway, she heard the whispers behind her. "Another desk jockey from D.C. Probably here to tell us we're filing our reports wrong. Look at her, not a single warfare insignia. Bet she's never even been on a ship." She'd heard it all before. The assumptions, the dismissal, the polite condescension that came with being a woman in uniform who didn't broadcast her resume on her chest. Admiral Thomas Morrison was standing by the window when she entered, watching SEAL candidates running on the beach in the distance. He was a tall man, weathered by 30 years of naval service, 20 of those with the SEALs. His chest displayed enough medals to stock a military museum. He turned and looked at Jessica, his eyes doing the automatic scan every special operator did, checking for threats, weapons, and most importantly, competence. His expression suggested he found the latter lacking. "Lieutenant," he glanced at the folder on his desk, "Hayes, from Naval Intelligence, here to discuss our operational security protocols." "Yes, Admiral," Jessica replied simply, setting her briefcase on the table. Morrison's executive officer, Commander Brad Sullivan, entered the room. Sullivan was everything Hollywood imagined a SEAL should be, 6'3", built like a linebacker, with arms that looked like they could bend steel. He took one look at Jessica and barely suppressed a smirk. "Intel sent us another PowerPoint warrior," Sullivan said to Morrison, not bothering to lower his voice. Morrison chuckled. "Now, Brad, be nice. I'm sure Lieutenant Hayes here has extensive experience with computers and filing systems." He turned to Jessica with a patronizing smile. "Tell me, Lieutenant, what's your rank again? I mean your real operational experience rank, not your administrative one." It was meant as a joke, a way to establish dominance, to remind her that in this room full of warriors, she was just a visitor. Jessica met his eyes steadily. "My rank is lieutenant, sir. As for operational experience, I'm not at liberty to discuss most of it." Sullivan laughed outright. "Not at liberty? Ma'am, this is a SEAL base. Everyone here has top-secret clearance. There's nothing you've done that we can't hear about." "Actually, Commander, there is," Jessica said quietly. Morrison's smile widened. "Really? What could naval intelligence possibly be involved in that's beyond SEAL classification?" Jessica reached into her briefcase and pulled out a single black folder. She placed it on the table but didn't open it. "Admiral, before we discuss operational security, perhaps we should establish exactly who I am and why I'm here." "By all means," Morrison said, sitting down with exaggerated interest. "Regale us with your tales of dangerous briefing rooms and hostile PowerPoint presentations." Jessica remained standing. "Admiral, have you ever heard of Operation Night Falcon?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Morrison's smile vanished. Sullivan straightened in his chair. "Night Falcon is a myth," Morrison said slowly. "A ghost story told in special operations circles." "Is it?" Jessica asked. She opened the black folder and slid a single photograph across the table. Morrison picked it up and his face went pale. It showed a compound in Syria, taken from a drone. In the corner was a timestamp and classification marking that made his hands shake slightly. TSSCINOFORN Night Falcon EYES only. "This is impossible," he whispered. Night Falcon was supposedly a single operator who infiltrated Ahmed al-Rashid's compound, eliminated his entire security detail, and extracted 2 captured CIA officers without backup, without extraction support, and without leaving any evidence except a single falcon feather placed on al-Rashid's desk, Jessica finished. "Yes, Admiral, I'm familiar with the story." Sullivan leaned forward aggressively. "You're saying you know who Night Falcon is? some mythical operator who supposedly did what an entire SEAL team couldn't. Jessica pulled out another document, this one with even higher classification markings. I'm not saying I know who Night Falcon is, Commander. She placed her hand flat on the document and looked directly at Morrison. I'm saying I am Night Falcon. Morrison actually laughed. That's ridiculous. He stopped mid-sentence as he began reading the document. It was a verification letter from the Director of Naval Intelligence, confirming that Lieutenant Jessica Hayes was indeed the operator known as Night Falcon, responsible for 17 successful solo operations in hostile territory between 2019 and 2023. This has to be fake, Sullivan said, snatching the document. Night Falcon supposedly took out an entire Iranian commando unit in Tehran, alone, without support. 14 men, Jessica corrected. And I had support. A local asset provided building blueprints. The rest was just patience and planning. Morrison stood up slowly, studying Jessica with new eyes. The Karachi extraction, the ghost ship incident off Somalia, the Beijing intelligence coup, that was all. You. Among other things, Jessica replied. But you're not even SEAL qualified, Sullivan protested. You're not Delta, not DEVGRU, you're just a woman who doesn't look like much, Jessica suggested. That's precisely the point, Commander. The best operators are the ones nobody suspects. You train to be warriors, to be recognized as dangerous. I train to be invisible, forgettable, underestimated. She pulled out her actual service record, the classified version. Morrison's clipboard clattered to the floor as he read it. Naval Intelligence Special Activities Division. Trained by a joint CIA-NSA program so classified it didn't officially exist. Fluent in 7 languages. Expert in 3 martial arts. Qualified on 47 different weapon systems. And most importantly, a psychological profile that allowed her to operate alone in hostile territory for months at a time without backup or communication. The Peshawar incident, Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper. Intel said it was a drone strike that took out that terrorist cell. Drones leave signatures, Jessica said. Debris patterns, thermal readings, I don't. Sullivan was flipping through the record, his skepticism crumbling with each page. This says you were captured in Yemen, held for 3 weeks. 22 days, Jessica corrected. I needed access to their communication network. The capture was intentional. The escape was messy but successful. Morrison sat back down heavily. The commanding officer of SEAL Team 6, a man who'd seen and done things that would break most people, was looking at Jessica like she was something beyond his understanding. Why are you here? He asked finally. Really here? Jessica closed the folders and straightened. Because someone in your command is leaking operational intelligence to foreign actors. 3 missions have been compromised in the last 6 months. Good men have died. I'm here to find your mole. And they sent you, alone? Sullivan asked. Commander, I infiltrated the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service headquarters in Moscow and spent 3 days accessing their computers while pretending to be a cleaning woman. I think I can handle investigating a Navy base in California. Morrison found his voice again. My SEALs are beyond reproach, every one of them. Every one of them is a hero, Jessica agreed. But heroes can be compromised, blackmailed, turned. That's why I'm here unofficially. That's why I look like a Pentagon paper pusher. Your mole won't see me coming. She turned to Sullivan. You asked about my rank, Commander. In the conventional military, I'm a lieutenant. In the world I actually operate in, rank is irrelevant. Results are all that matter. Word spread through the SEAL base like wildfire, though the details were classified. Within hours, every operator knew that the unassuming lieutenant from Naval Intelligence was something special, though nobody knew exactly what. Admiral Morrison had ordered absolute secrecy about Night Falcon, but secrets in a SEAL team were like water in a sieve. They found a way through. Jessica set up her operation in a small office overlooking the training grounds. She spent the first 3 days simply observing, taking notes, watching patterns. The SEALs went about their business, but there was a tension in the air. Everyone knew they were being investigated. On the 4th day, Master Chief Ray Cooper knocked on her door. Cooper was a legend among SEALs, 6 Bronze Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, and more combat deployments than anyone could count. His weathered face looked like it had been carved from granite. Lieutenant Hayes, he said, entering without waiting for permission. We need to talk. Jessica looked up from her laptop. Master Chief, what can I do for you? You can stop whatever game you're playing and tell me straight. Do you really think one of my boys is a traitor? Jessica studied him for a moment, then closed her laptop. Sit down, Master Chief. Cooper remained standing. I'll stand. 3 months ago, Echo Platoon's mission in Libya was compromised, Jessica said. They were ambushed at exactly the point where they were most vulnerable. 2 SEALs died. Operations go bad, Cooper said stiffly. It happens. 6 weeks ago, a hostage rescue in the Philippines. The hostages were moved 12 hours before the team arrived. Another SEAL wounded. Could have been local intelligence. 2 weeks ago, Somalia, Jessica continued. A high-value target extraction. The target knew exactly when and where you were coming. He had an ambush waiting. Cooper's jaw tightened. We lost Petty Officer Martinez in that one. I know, Jessica said softly. I read his file, 26 years old, wife pregnant with their first child. He died because someone told the enemy he was coming. The Master Chief finally sat down, his massive frame making the chair creak. My boys would die before betraying their brothers. People don't usually betray for ideology anymore, Jessica explained. They betray for money, for family, for survival. Someone could have leverage on one of your SEALs, blackmail, threats, things that would make even a good man do bad things. Cooper was quiet for a moment. That unassuming act you put on when you arrived, that was intentional. It's not an act, Jessica replied. I am unassuming. That's what makes me effective. Your SEALs are trained to be warriors to project strength. I'm trained to be forgotten the moment I leave a room. But your Night Falcon. Jessica's expression didn't change. That's classified, Master Chief. Right, Cooper stood. What do you need from me? I need you to treat me exactly as you have been, with skepticism and distance. Whoever the mole is, they need to think I'm not a threat. You think it's one of the senior staff. I think anyone with access to operational planning could be compromised. That includes you, Master Chief. Cooper's eyes flashed with anger, then respect. You've got balls, Lieutenant, I'll give you that. That afternoon, Jessica attended a briefing for an upcoming operation. The mission was classified but straightforward, a maritime interdiction in international waters, searching for weapons shipments. As the SEALs discussed tactics and timing, Jessica sat quietly in the corner, taking notes that seemed focused on procedural compliance rather than operational details. Commander Sullivan kept shooting her glances, clearly uncomfortable with her presence. Finally, he addressed her directly. Lieutenant Hayes, do you have any input from an intelligence perspective? Jessica looked up as if surprised to be addressed. Oh no, Commander, this all seems very thorough. I'm just observing for my report on operational security protocols. Several SEALs smirked. Even knowing she was something special, she still came across as out of her depth. After the briefing, a young SEAL, Petty Officer First Class Danny Chen, approached her in the hallway. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Jessica stopped. What is it, Petty Officer? Chen looked around nervously. Is it true what they're saying about you? What are they saying? That you've done things alone, behind enemy lines. Jessica gave him a bland smile. I'm just here to review security protocols, Petty Officer, nothing exciting. Chen nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe her. As he walked away, Jessica made a mental note. Chen had seemed nervous, but not about her, about something else. That night, Jessica broke into the base's secure records room. It took her 12 minutes to bypass 3 different security systems, leaving no trace of her entry. She wasn't looking for classified operational files, those would be too well monitored. She was looking for personal records, financial statements, phone records, email logs. By 300, she had found something interesting. 3 SEALs had unusual financial patterns, sudden debts paid off, family members with expensive medical treatments covered by anonymous benefactors. But one stood out more than the others. Lieutenant Commander James Bradford, Morrison's operations officer. 6 months ago, his daughter had been diagnosed with a rare cancer. Treatment costs were astronomical, well beyond what military insurance covered. Then suddenly, the bills were paid. Bradford claimed it was a loan from a family member, but Jessica's investigation showed no family members with that kind of money. She was photographing the documents when she heard footsteps in the hallway, 2 sets moving tactically. They stopped outside the records room. Jessica moved silently to the door, listening. She heard the electronic lock being overridden, someone else breaking in. She stepped behind a filing cabinet, disappearing into shadows. The door opened and two figures entered. In the darkness, she could make out their shapes, one tall, one shorter. They moved to the same filing cabinet she'd been investigating. "It's not here," one whispered. Jessica recognized the voice, Petty Officer Chen. "It has to be," the other replied. "Lieutenant Commander Bradford, if she finds those transfer records." "She already knows about the money," Chen said. "She has to, why else would she be here?" Jessica stepped out of the shadows. "Because 3 good men are dead and someone in this command killed them." Both men spun around. Bradford's hand went to his sidearm, but Jessica already had her weapon drawn, a small, silent automatic that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "Don't," she said quietly. "I'm very good with this." Chen raised his hands. "Ma'am, this isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you're destroying evidence of treason." Bradford's face was pale in the moonlight coming through the window. "You don't understand. They have my daughter." Jessica's expression didn't change. "Explain." The three of them stood frozen in the dark records room for several heartbeats. Jessica kept her weapon steady, trained somewhere between the two men, able to shift to either target in a fraction of a second. "Start talking, Bradford," she said. "You have 30 seconds before I call security." Bradford's shoulders sagged. 6 months ago, my daughter Emma was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, stage 4. The treatment she needed wasn't covered by insurance. Experimental therapy in Switzerland. $2 million. "So you sold out your brothers for money?" Jessica's voice was ice. "No," Bradford's voice cracked. "I was desperate, yes. I put her story on a crowdfunding site, begged everyone I knew. Then someone reached out, said they ran a charity for military families. They'd cover everything." Chen spoke up. "I was his liaison officer for the charity. I helped with the paperwork. We thought it was legitimate." Jessica didn't lower her weapon. "When did you realize it wasn't?" 2 months later," Bradford continued. "Emma was in Switzerland, treatment was working. Then I got a call. The man said I owed them a favor. Just small things at first, duty rosters, training schedules, nothing classified." "But it escalated," Jessica said. "It wasn't a question." "The Libya mission," Bradford's voice was barely audible. "They wanted the infiltration route, said if I didn't provide it, Emma's treatment would stop, she'd die." "So you chose your daughter over your teammates." "What would you have done?" Bradford demanded, sudden fire in his eyes. "If it was your child." Jessica was quiet for a moment. "I would have found another way. You're a SEAL officer. You're trained to think outside the box." Chen stepped forward carefully. "Ma'am, I only found out about the real situation 2 weeks ago. Jim came to me, confessed everything. We've been trying to identify who's behind this." "Why didn't you report it?" "Because they said they have people everywhere," Bradford said. "NSA, CIA, even naval intelligence. They said if I talk to anyone, Emma dies, and they release fabricated evidence that I've been selling secrets for years. My family would be destroyed." Jessica processed this information rapidly. "The Somalia mission, you gave them that too." Bradford nodded miserably. "Martinez died because of me. I see his face every night." "Who are they?" Jessica asked. "Russian, Chinese." "We don't know," Chen said. "The contact is always different, always uses voice modulation, but Jim noticed something." Bradford pulled out a piece of paper. "Each time they contact me, there's background noise. I've been recording it. There's a pattern, a ship's horn, very distinctive. 3 short blasts too long. It happens every 4 hours." Jessica's mind raced. A ship's horn with that pattern every 4 hours. That was a maritime signal, but not a standard one. More like a private shipping company's identification signal. "There's more," Chen said. "I've been tracking the money that paid for Emma's treatment. It's been laundered through dozens of accounts, but I found a thread. It leads back to a shipping company, Meridian Global Logistics." Jessica's weapon lowered slightly. She knew that name. Meridian Global was a front company, but not for a foreign government. It was connected to something much more dangerous, a private military contractor called Obsidian Solutions, run by former U.S. Special Operations personnel who'd gone mercenary. "Bradford, has anyone from your past reached out to you recently? Anyone from your SEAL days who left the service?" Bradford's eyes widened. Tom Reeves. He was in my BUDS class. Left the Navy 5 years ago, said he was going into private security. He called me a week before Emma got sick, wanted to catch up. Jessica holstered her weapon. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't foreign espionage. It was corporate espionage, run by people who knew exactly how the military worked because they used to be part of it. "Listen to me very carefully," she said. "Your daughter is safe. They won't hurt her because she's their leverage, but we need to flip this on them." "How?" Bradford asked desperately. "By giving them exactly what they want," Jessica said. "Chen, can you access the mission planning for next week's operation?" "The weapons interdiction? Yes, but we're going to feed them false intelligence. Make them think the operation is happening 12 hours earlier than planned. When they show up to interfere, we'll be waiting." Bradford shook his head. "You don't understand if they suspect I've turned." "They won't," Jessica interrupted. "Because you're going to tell them I'm getting too close, that you need to eliminate me before I discover the truth." Both men stared at her. "You want us to tell them we're going to kill you?" Chen asked. "I want you to tell them you've already killed me," Jessica corrected. "Tomorrow night I'm going to disappear. You'll report that you caught me breaking into classified files and had to eliminate me. Dumped my body in the ocean. Morrison will never believe." "Morrison won't know. This stays between us three until it's over." Jessica moved to the door. "Bradford, your daughter stays in treatment. We're not risking her life. But the people using her as leverage, they're about to learn what happens when you threaten a SEAL's family." The next evening, Jessica's plan went into motion. At 2100 hours, security cameras captured her entering the restricted intelligence vault. At 2113, they captured Bradford and Chen following her. At 2127, the cameras mysteriously malfunctioned for 15 minutes. When they came back online, Jessica Hayes was gone. Bradford reported to Admiral Morrison the next morning, visibly shaken. "Sir, we have a situation. Lieutenant Hayes attempted to access classified operational files last night. When we confronted her, she pulled a weapon. There was a struggle." Morrison stood up sharply. "Where is she?" "She went over the seawall, sir, into the ocean, the current. We couldn't recover the body." Morrison stared at Bradford for a long moment. "You're telling me that an intelligence officer tried to steal classified files and you killed her?" "She wasn't just an intelligence officer, sir," Chen added. "We found these in her quarters." He produced forged documents suggesting Jessica had been investigating the SEALs for potential recruitment by a foreign power. Morrison grabbed his phone. "We need to lock this down immediately. No one talks about this until I figure out what the hell is going on." Meanwhile, Jessica was very much alive, hidden in a shipping container Chen had prepared on the docks. She had surveillance equipment, weapons, and enough supplies for a week. From here, she could monitor all communications going in and out of the base. At 1400 hours, Bradford received the expected call. "I heard you had a problem with the intelligence officer," the modulated voice said. "It's handled," Bradford replied. "But Morrison is suspicious. He's moving up the weapons interdiction timeline. They launch tomorrow at 600 instead of next week." "Good work. Your daughter's treatment continues. We'll be in touch." Jessica smiled in her container. The trap was set. At 5:30 the next morning, Jessica watched through her surveillance equipment as 2 boats approached the coordinates Bradford had provided. They were sleek, military-style vessels flying no flags. Through her high-powered scope, she could see the crews, all former military, all heavily armed. What they didn't know was that SEAL Team 3 was already in position, having been briefed by Jessica through a secure channel only Morrison had access to. The Admiral had been shocked to learn she was alive, even more shocked when she revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. "Night Falcon, this is Trident Actual," Morrison's voice came through her earpiece. "We have visual on 2 hostile vessels. Confirm weapons free." "Negative, Trident," Jessica replied. "We need them alive, especially their leader. He'll be on the second boat, probably staying back to observe." Through her scope, she saw him, Tom Reeves, Bradford's old BUDS classmate, now running operations for Obsidian Solutions. He was watching through binoculars as his men prepared to intercept what they thought would be a SEAL weapons interdiction mission. "Trident, execute Phase 2, Jessica commanded. Suddenly, the water around both enemy boats erupted as SEAL combat swimmers emerged, having been waiting underwater for an hour. The surprise was total. Within seconds, both vessels were under SEAL control. But Reeves was already moving, grabbing a satellite phone. Jessica saw him dialing and knew immediately what he was doing, triggering the contingency plan. Emma Bradford's life was about to be threatened. Jessica burst from her container and sprinted toward the dock. She'd positioned herself precisely for this moment. As Reeves raised the phone to his ear, she took a running leap off the pier, covering an impossible distance to land on his boat's deck. Reeves spun toward her, his free hand going for his weapon. But Jessica was already there, her hand striking his wrist with surgical precision. The gun went flying as she continued her momentum, driving her shoulder into his chest and slamming him against the wheelhouse. "Night Falcon says hello," she whispered in his ear before rendering him unconscious with a blood choke that took less than 3 seconds. The satellite phone clattered to the deck. Jessica picked it up, hearing a voice on the other end asking for confirmation codes. She responded in perfect Russian, one of her 7 languages, convincing them the operation was proceeding as planned. By 600, it was over. 18 Obsidian operatives were in custody, and Jessica was standing in Morrison's office as Tom Reeves was brought in, hands zip-tied behind his back. Reeves looked at Jessica with a mixture of hatred and respect. "You're supposed to be dead." "I get that a lot," Jessica replied. Morrison stepped forward. "Tom Reeves, former Lieutenant SEAL Team 4, you were one of us. How could you do this?" Reeves laughed bitterly. "One of you? I gave everything to the teams. 3 marriages failed, body broken, PTSD they wouldn't treat properly. And what did I get? A medical discharge and a pension that barely covers rent. Obsidian offered me purpose again, and money, real money." "So you turned other SEALs into traitors?" Morrison's voice was dangerous. "I gave them what the Navy never would, proper care for their families," Reeves shot back. "Bradford's daughter would be dead if not for me." Jessica spoke quietly. "No, she'd be alive because the real charity organizations we contacted after discovering your scheme have already agreed to cover her treatment. You created the problem and sold yourself as the solution." Reeves's face went pale. "What?" "The St. Jude Foundation agreed to take Emma's case 3 days ago," Jessica continued. "Full coverage, no strings attached. We just needed to keep you distracted long enough to trace your entire network." Bradford entered the room then, his face a mix of relief and rage. "You used my daughter's cancer as leverage." Reeves couldn't meet his eyes. Morrison turned to Jessica. "Lieutenant Hayes, or should I say Night Falcon, you've dismantled a conspiracy that could have compromised special operations for years. How did you know where to look?" Jessica pulled out a small device from her pocket, the same kind of voice modulator Reeves had been using. "Because I've seen this before. Private military contractors recruiting active-duty personnel through blackmail and extortion. It happened in Iraq in 2018, Afghanistan in 2020. Same pattern, different players." She walked to the window, looking out at the SEALs training on the beach. "Your operators are the best warriors in the world, Admiral, but that makes them targets. Everyone wants what they have: skills, knowledge, access." Sullivan entered the room with Chen. "We've seized Obsidian's servers. They had files on over 200 special operations personnel, SEALs, Delta, Rangers, all potential targets for recruitment or blackmail." Morrison shook his head in disgust. "Chen, Bradford, you're both facing charges for your involvement." "Admiral," Jessica interrupted, "I'm recommending full immunity for both men." Everyone stared at her. Bradford was coerced through threats to his child. Once he realized the truth, he tried to find a solution. Chen actively helped expose the conspiracy. Without them, Reeves would still be operating. Morrison looked skeptical. "They still violated their oaths." "They did," Jessica agreed. "But they also proved that even good men can be broken by the right pressure. That's a lesson worth more than punishment. Use them to teach others how these operations work, how to recognize the signs, how to resist." Bradford's eyes filled with tears. "Ma'am, I thank you." Jessica turned to him. "Don't thank me yet. You'll be under investigation for the next year and you'll never hold a security clearance again. Your career is over. But you'll be with your daughter and that's what matters." Morrison made his decision. "Chen, Bradford, you're confined to quarters pending a full investigation. Reeves, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy, and murder. Martinez's death is on you." As military police led Reeves away, he called back to Jessica. "Who are you really? No one's that good alone." Jessica didn't answer, but Morrison did. "She's Night Falcon, the ghost who strikes from darkness and disappears without a trace. The operator who does alone what entire teams can't do together." Later, as the sun set over Coronado, Jessica stood on the beach with Morrison and Sullivan. Her bags were packed, her mission complete. "Where to now?" Morrison asked. "Classified," Jessica replied with a small smile. Sullivan handed her a small wooden box. "The teams wanted you to have this." Inside was a SEAL trident, the warfare pin worn by every Navy SEAL. But this one was different. It had a small falcon engraved on it. "You're not a SEAL," Sullivan said, "but you're a warrior, and you've earned our respect." Jessica studied the pin, then handed it back. "I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept this. I didn't earn it the way your men did. I didn't go through BUDS, didn't suffer on the beach, didn't ring out or push through. My war is different from yours." Morrison nodded slowly. "Then what can we give you? How do we honor what you've done?" Jessica looked at the SEALs running on the beach, their instructors pushing them beyond their limits. "Train them to see threats like this coming. Teach them that the enemy isn't always foreign, isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's the friend offering help when you're desperate." She picked up her bag and started walking toward the waiting car. "And Admiral, that joke you made about my rank when I arrived." Morrison winced. "About that?" "Night Falcon doesn't have a rank," Jessica said, turning back one last time. "She doesn't need one. In my world, respect isn't about what's on your collar or chest. It's about what you do when no one's watching, when there's no backup coming, when you're alone in the dark with only your training and determination." As her car pulled away, Morrison stood at attention and rendered a salute. Sullivan joined him, followed by every SEAL who had gathered to watch her leave. The lieutenant from Naval Intelligence who had arrived as a nobody was leaving as a legend. The story of Night Falcon would be told in team rooms and training grounds, not as confirmed fact, but as possibility. A reminder that the most dangerous operators aren't always the ones who look dangerous. 3 months later, Bradford received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph from his daughter's hospital room in Switzerland. She was smiling, holding a sign that said "cancer-free." On the back of the photo were just 2 words: "Stay strong." He never found out how Jessica had taken the photo or when she'd been to Switzerland. But he kept it on his desk for the rest of his life, a reminder that heroes come in unexpected forms, and that sometimes the greatest courage is admitting when you need help. The Night Falcon files remain classified, her real identity known only to a handful of people with the highest security clearances. But in the special operations community, her legend grew. The operator who could disappear in plain sight, who turned weakness into strength, who proved that the most powerful weapon isn't always a gun or a bomb, sometimes it's just being underestimated. And somewhere in the world, Jessica Hayes continues her work, walking into rooms where hard men dismiss her as insignificant, never knowing they're in the presence of one of the most lethal operators America has ever produced. She carries no medals, wears no warfare pins, claims no glory. She is Night Falcon, and she is always watching,